afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the County Planning Committee that's being held here today on the 1st of October. I'm Councillor Jill Campbell and I will chair today's meeting. This meeting is going to be broadcast live on YouTube, and before we start, may I remind people to switch off their phones and any other devices, put them on silent, microphones to be switched off at all times until invited to speak. If invited to speak, switch on the microphone and introduce yourself. And now for introductions, and the officers present will introduce themselves. Kirsty?
Kirsty Charlton, Committee Services.
Neil Carter, I'm the solicitor to the committee.
Stephen Reid, I'm the planning manager, chair.
Louisa Olivier, Senior Planning Officer.
David Battensby, Principal Engineer, Highways.
Claire Teasdale, Principal Planning Officer.
Alex Puddick, Senior Actor Travel Officer.
Steve Pilkington, Strategic Development Manager.
Thank you, everyone. Now we can start the meeting. Do we have any apologies for absence?
No, Chair.
And are there any substitute members?
No, not today.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest? No? Thank you. And can we approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of September? Do I have a proposer and seconder? Councillor Bellingham proposed. Seconder? Councillor Bell, thank you. We can now move on to the main business. There are two applications today, and the first application is going to be introduced by Louisa.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everybody. So this is an application for the erection of 81 homes, a convenience store and associated infrastructure and landscaping on land to the west of St Michael's Rise at Hawthorne, and that's a village to the east of the A19 and north of Easington. We do have some updates today for committees. So since the committee report was published, the applicants have submitted additional drainage, landscape, archaeological and affordable housing technical detail. In response, our consultees have confirmed that the drainage details are still missing some detail, and that the detailed design of the on-site drainage is still required as outlined in paragraph 354 of the report, that the landscape changes are minor, and landscape have confirmed that their position in relation to anticipated harm to the landscape character, visual amenity and the historic landscape setting of the village therefore remains as previously stated. The archaeological work details that no further scheme of archaeological works is recommended in relation to this development, and our archaeology section have agreed with this conclusion. The affordable housing plan details an appropriate split between rent and homes for sale in line with what has been agreed. So this slide shows the red line location plan of the site. You can see the site is located directly to the west of the 21st century housing development at St Michael's Rise, and it lies to the north of two smaller fields and paddocks and the 20th century residential properties of Stockton Road and West Lane. To the west is the B1432 road, known as Stockton Road, with roadside housing to either side of the road. To the north is an unclassified road known as Coach Lane. This is also an access route for the currently dormant Hawthorne Quarry. Further north are agricultural fields and a public right-of-way, and I've highlighted the position of the small number of facilities in Hawthorne Village, which includes a pub, a community hall, a church, a play park, and the position of two bus stops near to the proposed site entrance. So this is an aerial photograph, and it shows how the application site comprises 4 agricultural fields. 1 field is currently used for arable farming, and the remaining 3 are for pasture, and the hedgerows delineate the historic field patterns. This next slide shows that 3 of the fields fall within an area of high landscape value designation, And the Hawthorne Conservation Area, which is a designated heritage asset, lies immediately adjacent to the site to the east, and this contains the Michael and All Angels Church, which is a non-designated heritage asset, which lies 35 metres to the east of the site. In addition to these designations, we have constraints. The site falls within Flood Zone 1, as identified by the Environment Agency as the lowest risk of fluvial river flooding. There is an area at high, medium and low risk of flooding that cuts across the site from west to east, following the line of the ditch watercourse. And the nearest designated site is Hawthorne Dean, which is in SSSI, 627 metres to the south, and the site is within the impact risk zone for the SSSI. So this slide shows a view taken from Stockton Road, looking east over the site towards the west of the village conservation area, which is bounded by planting, where you can see the roof lines of current properties just above the settlement edge planting. This is another photo looking across the site from Stockton Road, looking east over the site towards the west of the village. And some of the hedgerows on the site that you can see there would need to be removed to facilitate the development. This is another view taken on the approach into Hawthorne from the north within the site, with the site and the village on the left of the roadway. This is another view taken travelling north of Stockton Road with the site on the right-hand side, and this is close to the position of the proposed access junction. This is a view taken from Coach Lane to the north of the site, looking south. And this is a view taken from within the grounds of St. Michael and Angels Church within the conservation area towards the site. So this is the proposed site plan with a mix of bungalows and 2, 3, 4 and 5 bed detached and semi-detached dwellings, each with their own parking areas and some with integral or separate garages and all with private rear gardens. There would be an additional 20 visitor parking bays distributed across the site, and each dwelling will also benefit from an electric vehicle charging point. A single access point is proposed from Stockton Road at the western site boundary to provide vehicular access to the housing and the convenience store, and there's a footpath connection in the northeast of the site to provide access to the north end of Hawthorne, and this involves the widening of some of the local footways, and we've got the main footway connection into Hawthorne via the Stockton Road entrance. So the proposal includes a 200 square metre single-storey rectangular retail unit for a convenience store that would face onto Stockton Road within the west of the site and north of the proposed access. And that would have a parking area to the front with 8 spaces. The primary route is proposed to be tree-lined, and the areas of open space to the east would accommodate much of the site's landscaping in the form of meadows, a mix of hedgerows, scrub and tree planting, and that would delineate the field boundaries within the site. There would be edge of settlement planting in the north of the site adjacent to Coach Lane, and the proposal also seeks to create 2 sustainable urban drainage system basins within the east of the site. And there's a fixed play area and village green proposed in the northeast of the site. So this slide details a typical street scene and the materials for the properties. The dwellings would have a mix of red, brown, multi-brown and light brown multi-brick elevations or an off-white rendered finish with roofs of light and dark grey concrete tiles and white UPVC windows and doors. The right-hand side there shows the proposed retail unit. This would be constructed in facing brick with cladding panels and would have a dark grey roof. So turning to consultations and representations, there's been one objection from a statutory consultee, and that's Hawthorne Parish Council, on the following grounds. This is not an allocated brownfield or grey-belt site, that the SLAR considered the site unsuitable, the loss of agricultural land, the impacts to ecology, the lack of housing need locally given other developments, the setting of a precedent for further development, the size and scale of the development is inappropriate, the harm to the setting of the village in the conservation area, drainage impacts, and conflict with the development plan. Historic England have raised concerns on heritage grounds and conclude there is harm to the significance of the conservation area through changes to its setting, and that the harm is moderate in degree, less than substantial in terms of the MPPF. Other statutory consultees have not objected but seek conditions and informatives or contributions. In terms of internal consultees, spatial policy consider the proposal would significantly change the function, form and setting of the village, and consider the proposed site scale to be unsustainable given the size of the existing settlement and its limited services and facilities, and that's even with the inclusion of a smaller convenience store. It is considered that there were several in-principle issues with the site that led to the unsuitable SHLAR classification, and that the landscape, heritage and ecology issues remain. DCC active travel officers conclude a holding no objection as there are multiple critical deficiencies in relation to active travel and sustainable transport provision. Design and Conservation advise that the development of the site would erode the established settlement pattern of the village and harm the setting and significance of the conservation area. In addition, it is advised that the development would impact on east-west views and the setting of St. Michael and All Angels Church, which is considered a non-designated heritage asset. Landscape. They consider the proposal would impact adversely on the setting and form of the village in a manner which cannot be adequately mitigated or compensated for. They also advise that there would be harm to the special qualities of this part of the HLV in respect of its condition, distinctiveness and its historic interest as part of the setting of the historic village. Affordable housing requests better distribution across the site and more detail of affordable products. Archaeology have requested trial trenching results, which we have now had submitted and have accepted. Other internal consultees have not objected, but request conditions, informatives, or contributions. External consultees have not objected, but have offered advice or requested a contribution. So we've had one representation from Councillor Mark Rowney, who objects to the application on the following grounds: the scale of the development, the impacts to the village characteristics, the pressure on existing infrastructure, traffic and congestion issues and road safety issues, flooding, and the potential for leasehold development. We've also had one representation from Graham Morris MP, who supports the application on the following grounds. There's a housing need for locals, including older, affordable and accessible homes. A similar housing development in Hawthorne was considered acceptable and has integrated well. The homes will have sufficient parking and EV charging points. Hawthorne is an exceptional commuter location with excellent connectivity. The development would significantly reduce the existing flood risk and protect current residents and properties from a long-term and persistent issue. The scheme will also provide important new community amenities. The granting of the application should be accompanied by a review of the speeding limit, and the economic benefits of the scheme are significant. So we've had a total of 123 representations, and these have been received from members of the public, the owners of operators of Hawthorne Quarry, and from the Campaign for the Protection of Rural England, objecting to the application on the following summarised grounds: conflict with national and local plan policy, the lack of need, the impacts to the conservation area, character of the area and landscape, impacts to residential and general amenity, design, flooding issues, impacts to ecology, highway safety, pressures on infrastructure, sustainability concerns, and the potential impacts to the future of Hawthorne Quarry. In terms of the planning balance, the development is not well related to the settlement of Hawthorne. Despite the proposed retail unit on the site, the existing facilities within Hawthorne and the existence of bus services, these are not considered to outweigh the County Durham Plan objective to locate new development where sustainable development patterns are maximised. Furthermore, the site does not result in a development that makes walking and cycling to facilities and services beyond Hawthorne a priority. Further, adverse harm is identified with respect to the landscape and heritage impacts from the development proposals upon the character and appearance of the surrounding area, designated landscape, which is an AHLV, and heritage assets. The economic, social and environmental benefits are provided by the development. These relate to the provision of new market and affordable housing in a time of need and associated benefits during construction and occupied phases. Further, the scheme provides for improved flooding prevention that goes beyond that of the application site and into the wider community in part. So to conclude, officers do not consider the benefits to outweigh the harms identified, even in the event of the tilted balance test of paragraph 11D, and that applies in the future due to a reduced housing supply position. In conclusion, therefore, the proposal would conflict with the development plan as a whole, with no other material considerations outweighing this conflict. Therefore, it is recommended that the application be refused, subject to the reasons as set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Louisa. We have several people speaking today. Altogether we've got Councillor Barry Curran for the Parish Council and 2 objectors, Arthur and Elaine Hazelrig, and supporters Michael Hepburn and Sean Cuggy. Now, Councillor Curran, you have an unlimited time to speak, that we would ask if you could keep it as close as possible to 5 minutes, please. Thank you. You can start.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, on the 21st of January 2025, the Parish Council sent in objections to Durham County Council. And the first paragraph, I think, is hugely important. It's already been stated by the officer. That Hawthorne Village, not Hawthorne Parish, Hawthorne Village, is not a site identified under Durham Council's local plan for development. In fact, it is contrary to the fundamental principles of the plan. This development would compromise everything we have raised in our letter and the objections which have been sent in. Increased traffic, noise, pollution, concerns to the present environment, overshadowing of existing houses. The impact this would pose on the conservation area, the impact on residents, historical and architectural interest. In this area, we have a number of listed buildings. It would alter the character, appearance of the area. The landscape would also be affected. May I quote from the officer's report? I must say it was an extensive report to read, but we got through it eventually. 3 items, Madam Chair. Only historic village in East Durham. That is usually significant, as the East Durham is normally associated with the coal fields of the south, the west and the north of historic Hawthorne Village. Hawthorne Village has been here since Anglo-Saxon times. We're talking about the 7th century. It's farmed and been a farming land ever since. Another quote from the officer. Best example of a village and its surrounding farmland. And the last one, which I feel is hugely as important as the other 2, has medieval field systems, ridge and furrow. These have been in existence since the 9th century in County Durham. All these will be affected by this proposal, not to mention the loss of trees and hedgerows in our environment. The trees and hedgerows, by the way, Madam Chair, the hedgerows probably been there 200 or 300 years. They've certainly on Stockton Road, the B132, that'll have been an old trunk road and they've been there since those days, not the way it is at the present. The environment is a huge impact for us down here. To the east of us, to the coast, is Hawthorne Dean, or the Hive, as people call it. Under Durham County Council, this area is important of natural beauty and interest. We get thousands of walkers coming each year to go down there, to pass down the lanes. The traffic is enormous sometimes in the summertime. So the environment, the impact it's going to have is huge. The disruption to wildlife and their habitats on this field and on this area is huge. This is something already which is happening at the Garden Village development, which is in the parish of Hawthorne, over the other side of Kinley Hill, where animals, deer, badgers, foxes, bird life are all being driven out there in normal habitat into the area near the village. I believe Belway have got an application for the north end or the west end of that area as well to build further housing. The effect this will have on villages' natural features, such as the beck that runs through the field, which may be part of the proposal, and the loss of open spaces. These changes could degrade the natural beauty and the ecological integrity of the village. Madam Chair, Hawthorne has been a farming village since the 8th century. It was here in the beginnings of County Durham in 883 AD, long before the Prince Bishops, long before the Normans came. Madam Chair, please follow the officer's recommendation and refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The next speakers are Arthur and Elaine Hazelrig. You have 5 minutes between you. I don't know if you've decided who's going first and how you're dividing it up.
Actually, I'm going to speak, really, and see if there's any time left.
Thank you. Carry on.
Right. Well, good afternoon. I'm not going to reiterate what's already been said, because I think it's been put very clearly, and all the different aspects. I'm proposing to let you hear what it's like for somebody who is going to be directly affected by this proposed development. So I don't know if you realise that this is not, looking at it, it looks like a flat site. It's not a flat site, it's got a hill. And my house, which is at the top right of that, is actually at the bottom end of this hill. So when you look into my garden, and it has a 68-metre fence along it, all the people could see straight into the whole of my garden. They could see they've proposed a little pathway which stops a few metres from my fence, which is a post and rail fence. They've got the village green, which, now what do people do on a village green? It's quite sizable. They play games, you know, they have ball games, throw balls for the dogs. Where are these balls going to go? They're going to go down the hill, through or over my fence into the garden. So not only will I have people looking in, I'll have people climbing in to reclaim their balls. But the fact is, our garden is a half-acre site. Part of it was bought by the previous owners which was part of this same field, a little bit of it. That's why it's quite an irregular shape. And I've forgotten what I was going to say there. Yes, so this walkway and everything coming into it. Now, I'm not wanting favourable treatment, but when we arrived less than 4 years ago, we put a small extension on. And the small extension, the planning officer came to see us, and she said, I've got to make sure that this doesn't impact on your neighbours, this small extension, which was fair enough. Well, I'm asking for the same amount of fairness, because there is no way that I can make my garden private again. Now, last year, when I went to one of the consultation meetings, I did say to Bellway, well, could you put an 8-foot fence up, which would at least give some privacy? And he said, oh no, you can't have that. It's a conservation village. Well, if you can't have an 8-foot fence for a bit of privacy, but you can have 81 houses and a shop, I don't really think that is fair, as what was done for me. The second thing was, I also asked about the drainage, because of the shape of my garden, I come into this little bit that gets a little bit of flooding in one part of it. And I asked about that, because he said that we were making a big thing about how it was all going to be much better. Well, I said, what happens? Because it only floods if we have really heavy rain. You've built your houses and you've moved off. What happens if it floods then? And he laughed and he said, not our problem. That's for the water company's problem. So actually, I thought that was quite disingenuous, especially as last Friday, just this past Friday, we got a letter in asking us to support their motion and suggesting that, in actual fact, if we didn't, this flooding was never going to be sorted by Northumbria Water. Well, Northumbria Water have been working very hard over the last year to try and get it all sorted. I don't know whether it was meant to intimidate or you know, whatever, but when they've asked for my support to support them, my answer is no, no, no. Finally, I want to refer to the letter by our MP. Now, an MP is supposed to represent the people that have voted for them. They're supposed to come round. He didn't attend either of the two consultation things. He hasn't been round the village to ask anyone how they feel about it. He's just arbitrarily sent in this letter. At best, it's just pure laziness on his part. And so I would ask you to disregard this letter, because in actual fact, he hasn't consulted with any member of Hawthorne Village. That's it.
Thank you very much.
So I urge you to not accept this proposal.
Thank you, Mrs Hazelrigg. Now we come to the supporters. Again, you have 5 minutes between you, 1.5 minutes each. I'm jumping the gun there. Mr Hazelrigg, do you want to add anything? I think there's 45 seconds left.
What did you say, please?
45 seconds.
Do you wish to add anything? You still have 45 seconds left on your 5-minute overall time.
I would just like to say thank you for listening to my wife and everybody else who has spoken. The points I was going to raise have actually been dealt with quite adequately by the lady who spoke at the first outing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, sorry, we can start with Michael Hepburn. You have 2.5 minutes.
Thank you.
Excuse me, you need to press the button.
Off again. Sorry. This is Sean Cuggy, Senior Strategic Land and Planning Manager at Bellway Homes. This scheme will deliver many significant benefits for the local community and for Durham as a whole, but despite this, planning officers are of the opinion that, on balance, some of the impacts of the development outweigh these benefits, and that's what this application comes down to. Do the benefits outweigh the impacts? Your officers have confirmed that the development won't lead to congestion in the area, the proposed access is safe, and many other technical matters are agreed. This development has been very carefully designed and will not overwhelm the village in any sense. However, in relation to landscape and heritage, our specialist consultants disagree with the officers' assessment of the level of harm that the development could cause. We accept that there will inevitably be some impact in introducing houses to an area where there currently aren't any, but this scheme has been developed sensitively, responding to the village's character and meets all separation standards. 30% of the site will remain undeveloped as a new village green. Over 150 trees will be planted. An area of the ridge and furrow will be protected. Officers agree with us that the harm will be less than substantial. This harm then needs to be weighed against the benefits. The planning officers have concluded that Hawthorne is fundamentally an unsustainable location. They state that this is because Hawthorne doesn't have enough facilities and residents will need to leave the village on a daily basis. This is not now, nor has ever been a policy test. I don't know about you, but I regularly leave the area where I live to go to work, shop at the big supermarket and take my kids to school. Sometimes I use public transport, but sometimes I have to use my car. It'd be lovely if everything was within walking distance, but that just isn't realistic. Hawthorne has a pub, a restaurant, a church, a community centre and a play area. The development will deliver a new shop and village green. There's a primary school within the required 2-mile walking distance. And as they do now, residents can use the bus stops immediately next to the site, which provide regular, fast and frequent services to places like Dalton Park, Easington, Peterlee and Sunderland for work, supermarkets, high school, doctors and anything else. This isn't unusual and isn't unsustainable. I'll invite you to make your own decision on whether this village would make a good location for this mix of houses, taking into account the benefits of the development, which Sean's going to run through.
Thank you. Mr Hepburn.
Thank you. So County Durham is in dire need of new homes, a position which will be officially acknowledged later this month when the council will no longer be able to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply and the local plan will become out of date. This development, whilst modest in scale given its context, would help with this situation, providing much needed new homes in East Durham for local people in the form of family housing, affordable housing and older people's accommodation via bungalows and adaptable homes. But it will also bring a range of other benefits which a typical application for housing may not. As we all know, Hawthorne doesn't currently have a shop, meaning that residents already have to leave the village on a daily basis for everything, even the basic essentials. This development will deliver one. It will serve both new and existing residents, which will be accessible on foot and reduce the need to travel by car. We have strong interest from several potential operators who are just waiting for plan permission to be secured, and we see this as an improvement which perhaps something this scheme could deliver in the village. I'm also aware of concerns from residents regarding Stockton Road and the numerous crashes and near misses that happened there all too frequently that became clear at the public consultation events we held. We did try to address this through our early proposals in the form of traffic calming and speed reduction measures, but unfortunately these weren't supported by highways officers. However, we do still feel that the new access and improved pedestrian crossing facilities will help improve the situation from what it is now. Again, perhaps only something that this scheme can deliver. Improvements will also be made to local services and infrastructure, including enhancements to the bus stops, as mentioned, pedestrian crossing, improved footpaths in the village, and financial contributions to the tune of almost £800,000 towards primary schools and special educational needs, as well as doctor surgeries, course and mitigation schemes, and open space division, all in accordance with policy requirements. In addition, the development does represent a huge investment of almost £10 million into East Durham. It will not only bring construction and supply chain jobs, additional expenditure on local services, and through the new convenience store. The new residential development will also help to support existing services, including the community centre and the local pub and restaurant, which we understand has had to reduce opening hours in recent years. Last and by no means least, as we all know, Hawthorne has suffered for years of flooding issues, and this was a major concern raised to us by many residents during consultation process. We've listened to this, and through the on-site drainage system, the flooding issues which have not been dealt with for many years will be addressed because of this development. Our drainage engineers in the project have worked closely with council officers to develop a scheme that will not only mitigate against the development, but will also address the long-standing flooding and drainage issues already present in the village, including the flooding of properties, the cutting off of access to the village when the road is closed and underwater. This is something which we are not obliged to do under legislation or policy, but something we feel is necessary and of benefit to current and future residents. Furthermore, as of this morning, flood risk officers at the council
30 seconds remaining.
Flood risk officers at the council have confirmed that our improvements will address these flooding issues and that this scheme is the only way these will ever be addressed. To quote their words, "There can be no funding for this flood reduction scheme through normal flood risk management funding channels due to the low level of damage caused by the flood events and the high cost of the works if done independently. Therefore, without our scheme, it is likely that these flood risk issues will continue indefinitely." I'll obviously ask you to support this scheme today, given all the benefits that I've gone through. However, if a resolution cannot be reached at this meeting, whether we'd ask that the application is deferred to allow more time for discussion on the planning balance, but also in light of information that came forward this morning on flooding issues. We are more than happy to take on board suggestions and continue to work with council officers, who we appreciate are under pressure, and try to address these concerns in the hope that we can avoid a time-consuming and costly appeal, allowing you to vote in a scheme which you are satisfied is being rigorously scrutinised to deliver the best possible outcome for the village.
Time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Louisa, do you want to address some of the points raised there?
Right, yes, I'll just come back first to, there was a couple of points by Mrs. Hazelrig. So we have considered privacy and the issue of ball games at this site, and that's covered in the report. We don't feel that that's a critical issue at this site, and we don't think that that would be a suitable reason for refusal. In terms of drainage, it may be that the developers have reached out to you because they have put forward this scheme to reduce flooding off-site to properties in the road. But we have considered this as part of the report, and we still feel that this does not weigh in favour of this proposal. So in terms of some of the points raised by the developer and the agent, in terms of sustainability, we do take a different stance to developers on sustainability, but this is backed up by recent appeal decisions, most notably a recent decision that landed in the last couple of weeks at Seaton. Policy 6 requires good access by sustainable transport to relevant services and facilities. And in this case, the relevant services and facilities are mostly outside of the settlement. It's noted that the MPBF advises to promote sustainable development in rural areas, that housing should be located where it will enhance and maintain the vitality of rural communities. But it also says that planned policy should identify opportunities for villages to grow and thrive, especially where this will support local services. However, the strategy of the County Durham Plan directs significant development to larger settlements. And while some development may be appropriate in smaller villages in line with the MPF, it would need to be proportionate, and we don't feel that this is a proportionate development. In terms of housing land supply, yes, today we have a 5-year supply. On the 21st of October, we won't have a 5-year supply. We don't have the exact figures as yet today. It's likely to be around about 4-year supply. This means that the presumption in favour will apply and it's engaged. And that means that where planning permission must be granted unless the adverse impacts of the proposal significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. This does not alter our position, and we feel that the adverse landscape, heritage and sustainability impacts outweigh all the benefits detailed. And this has been covered extensively within the report. Another matter was in terms of the primary school. So they have mentioned that the school's within 2 miles. It is just within 2 miles, but in terms of accessibility, that isn't relevant. That's a home to school transport measurement. We would look at a school that was within 800 metres to be an acceptable distance in terms of accessibility and sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex, do you want to add anything on the sustainability points?
Thanks, Chair. Absolutely. I would say in this instance, there are a number of critical deficiencies that were identified as part of our review on the latest submission by the applicant. These relate primarily into the current provision of facilities and amenities within the village that can serve day-to-day needs. Where those cannot be accessed or where those do not exist, you would expect that those in the nearby area would be potentially accessible by walking, wheeling and cycling. Also, public transport does come into play on that. In this instance, it means that users will have to travel to Easington, Peterlee to access such facilities such as a primary school that's been acknowledged, including those relating to leisure, healthcare, but also employment to an extent. The applicant itself highlighted that only confident cyclists would look to use Stockton Road to cycle for a day-to-day journey. So there is already an existing issue. One of the recommendations that we tend to work with on applicants is to identify, based on a thorough audit, which has not been completed in this instance, to identify a range of suitable off-site transport infrastructure proposals that would create high quality and attractive alternative routes to travelling by, for example, the private car. We have been unable to reach that position on this occasion because further information has not been provided. Hence, in my report, which Louisa has highlighted, has led to a holding objection being recommended. In this instance, it would likely require a significant investment in off-site transport infrastructure to mitigate against those impacts and provide truly alternative and high-quality routes for walkers, wheelers and cyclists leaving but also accessing the site for day-to-day activities.
Working, sorry. Thanks, Alex. Now, I can throw the matter open to questions to members. Councillor Bellingham.
Thank you, Chair. There's a lot of information there and there's a lot of detail being looked into with regards to the size of this development in such a small settlement. The high landscape value, all policy 6. When the developers have stated the balancing exercise has been, in our view, skewed, I'm quoting from the report now, by the planning officers, and they've reckoned that it's been incorrect how the officers have assessed everything. As I say, there is a lot of detail and there's lots of elements to this. And I was just wondering, I would just like to ask them, it's quite subjective, why do they think that these decisions have been skewed when there's so many different layers to the complexity to this proposal?
Thank you, Councillor Bellingham. So that's a question for the developer, for Mr. Cuggy.
Yeah, sorry, Michael Hepburn, the planning consultant. I'll speak on Sean's behalf. Yeah, it is a balance, and there is some subjectivity in there, so it's understandable there's areas of disagreement. But in this case, I think you've just heard an example there where reference was made to accessibility on foot and by bicycle, but only very passing reference was made to access to places like Easington and Peterlee where people would go by bus. So there's bus stops on the doorstep of this site with regular and frequent services, so people could travel by public transport, as they do now, to all the facilities in the neighbouring towns. But we don't feel that's been given sufficient weight. And then equally on the other side, in terms of harm, we think some of those harms have been overstated. Or we've got expert consultants similar to the council officers, and they take a slightly different view that the harm's not quite as bad. So it's not that there isn't any harm, it's just that the balance is slightly different.
Thank you. So, Councillor Hope, do you want to add anything?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Kenny Hope from Delsey District in Consett. There is a clear need for new properties throughout the country and the county. And Graham Morris MP's statements within the planning itself, I think he's just taken the party line of 1.5 million homes by 2029. I just want to ask Michael Hepburn, driving to and from work, you say there's no policy. However, does this not contravene central government's net zero policy in the fact that it is going to increase carbon footprint by people driving to and from their properties to work? And if not, why not does he agree with the sentiment that it will increase that carbon footprint? Thank you.
Mr Hepburn.
Yeah, I think there's a misrepresentation of the net zero there. There's a move towards net zero in time. But it's not the case that every new development must be net zero. Obviously, people currently travel by car, and that will continue in the future. This development has opportunities for people not to travel by car, including the existing residents who wouldn't have to travel by car as they do currently and could go to the local shop for day-to-day needs and then use public transport when they need to for other visits. Is anything, Sean?
Sorry, I just would add to that as well that we've got no objection for internal or external consultees on highways grounds in terms of impacts on highways network or public safety. And as I mentioned, the works that we're doing to improve the bus stops and the pedestrian crossings onto Stockton Road should also help with improving pedestrian safety along there, because we know there's a long-standing issue of accidents, etc.
Thank you. Mr Hope, Councillor Hope, did you have anything to add? No. Any other questions? Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. Alan Bell, Lumley West Drayton Division. Couple of questions. One is for our highways officer. There was a comment in there from the Bellways agent in relation to road safety and yeah, sort of like crashes, everything, whatever's happening there. So I'll just comment on that one. And the other questions is to the agent himself. Mention on the flood risk, but then he then went on to say it's low level risk. So I just wanted some more clarification in relation to where the flooding risk is and how they would hope to mitigate that problem with such a development. And then the benefits, like a lot was said about the benefits of this scheme. However, the shops and the schools, obviously the extra numbers, so the financial contribution to the schools and the NHS is because of the increase in the numbers what would be increased for this scheme. So it's just that's just to sort of to facilitate them extra numbers. So I'm not too sure that's a benefit. But the shop, when it states in relation where the locals won't, they'll be able to shop local. I'm not sure if I heard right, but did I not hear it was a 200 square metre shop, which is a very, very small...
Councillor Bell, can we just have this in bite-sized pieces? Can you start with your first question, which was to highways?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the question regarding the road safety. The accidents tend to happen at the crossroads fundamentally, which is away from the site. Whilst the site will generate additional traffic on the roads, it's not expected that they will contribute greatly to an increase in accidents. So in that respect, there's negligible impact on highway road safety. As part of the scheme, we had negotiated the improvement of the road with a pedestrian refuge to try and help pedestrians to cross the road. but that really is only for pedestrians. It doesn't help cyclists or others crossing the road. But within the highway that's there, that's all that could be provided. I hope that answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, if I remember right, there was a question about flooding. Was that addressed to the developer?
Yeah, it was flooding in the shop.
Let's start with flooding. Mr. Hearn, or
Sorry,
Do you want
Sean Cook, I'll answer that one.
do you want to answer that one?
Chair.
Okay.
Yeah, so in relation to the flooding, I was quoting a response from the local lead flood authority received this morning, who referenced a low level of damage from the flooding. So effectively, if you like, they've taken a balancing exercise and basically said there's not enough damage caused by the flooding that would outweigh the significant costs needed to fix it. In our view, that's not correct. It is a significant issue. It's significant damages to homes. We've already heard from a resident this morning who experiences flooding issues. So our proposal is to fix that, and it's acknowledged that this scheme would fix that, when what the council or the local lead flood authority are saying that in their view it wouldn't warrant being fixed without this development. So without us fixing it, the flooding issue in the village to those properties and to the road and the crossing wouldn't be resolved.
And finally, Councillor Bell, question about the balance.
It was in relation to the shop, the size of it, I wasn't too sure if I heard it was 200 square metres, which,
Yeah, so I think, again, one of you guys, can you answer that?
Yep, no problem. It's so the shop will be a convenience store. It's not going to be a big supermarket to do a weekly shop, but it'll be there for top-up shopping and day-to-day needs, like a premier convenience store, that sort of size. And you mentioned as well the contributions being seen as benefits. Yes, they are to mitigate the impact of the development, but obviously the benefits they then have in terms of improving the GP surgeries or schools will be able to be enjoyed by all the pupils and the patients who go to GPs.
Thank you. Now, have you finished your questions, and do you want to just have any further comments on the application? Anybody wish to add anything? Councillor Freeman.
Thank you. Councillor David Freeman, Elvet, Gilesgate and Shincliffe Ward. Like Councillor Hope, I'm quite surprised that the MP seems to think that this is a good development. Yes, we do need homes, and we do need homes in East Durham, but they have to be in the right location and they have to comply with our planning policies. This development does not seem to comply with those policies. It's quite rare in my time on planning committees to have read a report that is so critical of this application, and there's numerous grounds to refuse the application, and therefore I would actually move that we do refuse the application, which is in line with the officer's recommendations. We've heard about the SLA saying that this is unsuitable on heritage grounds. This is a site which has very significant historic value, and that will be lost if we get a housing development built on top of it. Sustainable transport, design, damage to the nearby conservation area. So there's a whole load of policies that are set out in the report to refuse this application. I did hear that the applicants talked about the possibility of an appeal. I don't think we should concern ourselves with such a threat. The policies are there. This application is contrary to so many policies that I wouldn't fear that if the applicants do lose this application and go to appeal, that they'll win. So just in summary, to support the officer's recommendation to refuse this application.
Thank you, Councillor Freeman. I have to agree with you on that. I think that although we have to give significant weight to housing need, and that's quite right, and there are benefits to this application, I think in particular what strikes me as a special character of this location is very important and very significant, and the adverse impacts of the proposed development on this particular location in terms of landscape harm, but also very real sustainability arguments, demonstrably outweigh the benefits of this proposal. And I think I've lost count of the number of policies that it's in conflict with. And I read over and over again in this report, and I've never seen it mentioned so many times, that this harm that's going to be caused cannot be mitigated against nor compensated for. The site is largely placed in an area of high landscape value and adjacent to the Hawthorne Conservation Area. And Hawthorne is the only historic village left in East Durham that was not expanded or affected by industry in open landscape. And irreparable harm could be done if this goes through. So I ask whether anybody wishes to support Councillor Freeman's motion. Councillor Hope, and second, Councillor Bellingham. And if you would like to vote on the proposal that this application be rejected.
Could I just add something before we go to voting, Chair, please?
Just a minute, Councillor Hope. Just to confirm, Councillor Bellingham, you seconded the proposal. I think this was unanimously carried. Rushing the gun again. This now has to be put to the vote again. All those that accept that the proposal should be rejected, the absolute application should be rejected. Unanimously in favour of refusal of the proposal. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members. We're just waiting for... Oh, the door's closed. This is our second application for the day, and this is for temporary planning permission for 10 years for the relocation of the existing sales sites area associated with CM car boot sale. Sorry. The 3.77 hectare site is located to the north of Seaham and the south of Ryhope. It comprises of open area of grassland, previously in agricultural use. It's bound by the road B1287 to the west with the Durham Coast Railway line just beyond, which is that there. To the north is a continuation of the open grassland, and to the east are the King Charles Coastal Path and footpath number 7 Seaham, which just comes along here. The land to the south benefits from planning permission for the existing Seaham car boot sale and associated parking. The site itself lies within the Durham Greenbelt and in an area of higher landscape value as designated in the County Durham Plan. The site is also within the defined heritage coast. There are no ecological designations within the application site, but it is situated adjacent to the Durham Coast Site of Special Scientific Interest, which forms part of the Durham Coast Special Protection Area and Ramsar Site, and the Durham Coast Special Area of Conservation, with local wildlife sites to the north and the south. There are no designated heritage assets within this application site, and there are no residential properties within 600 metres of it either. This is just the same view, but in an aerial image, and the route of the public rights of way to the east are shown with the purple dot lines just along the cliff edge. You can see the layout of the car parking areas for the existing car boot sale to the south, which is in here, but we'll have some other plans later. This is a photograph. It shows the proposed site access from the B1287, and this is already one of the existing permitted accesses to the car boot sale. The application site is the grassland in the foreground. It's this area here. We also have another view. It's the same access, just here, but only it's a view looking south, and this is the existing one of the existing parking areas for the car boot sale currently, with the sales area just being a little bit further in the distance. You will be, as you can see from the photographs that I've showed you, the proposed site, like the existing, is in a prominent location. You can't see it. It's open to views from the public rights of way and the road. The next slide, if the mouse will move, is a plan showing the proposed layout. The proposal itself is detailed in paragraphs 11 to 18 of the officer report. As I previously said, it's the temporary relocation of the current car boot selling area for a period of 10 years, while the current selling area is used in conjunction with the Scotland-England Green Link 1, known as Seagull 1 for short, development, which provides a major reinforcement of the England and Scotland electricity transmission system. The current selling area would be used as the main landfall site and the site compound for an underground cable required as part of that development. As I've said, the access to the relocated selling area would be off the existing access off the B1287, and you can see on this plan here that it's proposed that the access track and a little bit of land within it would be tarmacked, and there would be in this location approximately 10 portaloos that would be brought on and off site for the event. The relocated selling area is this area up to the north, the coloured green area. The current planning permission restricts the use of the land for the outdoor market and car boot sale to Sundays between 12 p.m. to 5 p.m, and this is from the last Sunday in March till the third Sunday in October each year. And the existing permission also restricts the use of the car parks for those times as well. And the same times are proposed for the proposed relocated sales area, and the parking areas permitted under the extant planning permission would continue to be used during the period. The car boot sales also do take place on bank holidays, on bank holiday Mondays, but this is also allowed under permitted development rights, allowing the holding of a market for up to 14 days in any calendar year without the need for planning permission. This plan shows the existing and proposed selling areas. So this plan here is a plan of that is the existing selling area. Well, the existing selling areas here, and then these two areas are the permitted car parking areas. What I've done on here is to show those areas so that you can see where they are in relation to the proposed selling area. So extant planning permission being the area outlined in yellow and orange, and then the red being the proposed new selling area. And this, so basically it's a replacement of this area here for this area here for approximately 10 years or until the Seagull 1 works are finished, whichever's the earliest. In terms of consultations and representations, these are set out in detail in paragraphs 65 to 90 of the officer report, along with the details of the publicity that's been undertaken. We've had no objections from statutory and internal consultees, subject to conditions where appropriate. We've had 4 representations, and of those, all 4 were letters of support. And the matters raised by those making representations are summarised on the slide. But basically, they've mentioned that a supportive income with knock-on benefits to local shops and the area, an important asset to the community in terms of affordable goods at affordable prices, social and well-being benefits, including a lifeline for a lot of people, as well as environmental benefits, promoting reuse, recycling, and positive words were also made regarding the applicant. National Grid has highlighted the benefits of the Seagull One scheme and also the need for the current selling area to be used in order to assist the provision of that scheme. In summary, again, the proposal is for this temporary relocation of the sales area of an established car boot sale, first granted planning permission in 2009. Given that planning permission already exists, this application does not raise any new material planning considerations that would warrant refusal of planning permission. The change in location would not result in the increase in the level of frequency or of disturbance which already occurs, including to residential amenity, given the distance from the site to the closest residential properties. Careful consideration has been given to the main planning issues associated with the development, given its location, operation and appearance, and subject to conditions where appropriate, the impacts are considered to be acceptable. Greenbelt harm has been assessed, and very special circumstances have been found to exist. The impact upon the AHLV and the Heritage Coast have also been considered, and again, the benefits of the development we consider would outweigh any harm, and plus the harm would be tempered by the temporary duration of the car boot sales. No significant adverse impacts on nature conservation designations are expected, and consideration has been given to the temporary loss of best and most versatile land, which part of the proposed selling area covers. The proposal itself has generated very little public interest, with 4 representations received and all in support of the application. The proposed development is considered to broadly accord with relevant policies of the County Durham Plan and relevant sections of the NPPF. As such, I recommend that the application be approved, subject to the conditions set out in the officer report.
Thank you, Claire. Now we have one speaker, the applicant, Mr. Ross. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Craig Ross. I'm a chartered town planner, and I speak on behalf of GSE Greys, who represent both the Snowden family as landowners and Nobles Promotions Limited as operator. They want me to stress the important point and the starting point of this, which is that the relocation is only required because of the Eastern Green Link 1 project. This is a nationally significant energy scheme. It will deliver renewable power to millions of homes, and your role today is hopefully to ensure that the project can move forward. We'll also be making sure that Nobles Promotions and the wider community do not lose a long-standing and valued facility. We are very grateful to officers for recommending approval, and I do not intend to go over the full planning balance. There's just 2 short points to raise. One is a point on information about the 10-year consent, and a second point with regards to your consideration on condition 14. Point 1, the 10-year period comes directly from National Grid's requirements and the realities of reinstating the site. The Snowden family are required to sign a 5-year lease with National Grid. That lease also has a 2-year proposed extension period. This means that the land could be tied up for 7 years. Once grid work ends, the field cannot be used straight away. The land must be reseeded in spring or summer. It then needs up to 2 growing seasons to become safe and robust like the current selling site. If the grid leave in autumn, reseeding would be delayed until the following spring. With the establishment time added, it makes it a realistic period of around 9.5 years, hence the temporary consent for 10, or whichever comes sooner in terms of completion of the project. Point 2 is for your consideration with regards to condition 14. We accept the need for strong conditions. They ensure the use stays temporary, controlled and reversible. However, condition 14 as written currently requires the portaloos to be removed after every single event. In operational terms, Noble has raised this as quite a big change from how the current site is currently managed. At the existing site, storage containers stay on year-round, showing that the facilities can be managed responsibly. The weekly removal of portaloos could add traffic, raise costs and create a logistical problem in terms of the operation of the site, while delivering only limited benefit in terms of protection of landscape. As a practical compromise, Nobles would like to propose that the portaloos are removed at the end of each operating season and returned for the first event of the following year. This keeps the site clear entirely during the closed months while remaining workable for the operator. We would therefore ask members to consider this small amendment to condition 14 to reflect this seasonal approach and to strike a balance between control and practicality. So in summary, point 1, the 10-year consent is as a requirement of the SAGL1 project and the need for the Snowden family to enter into a lease with National Grid. In terms of point 2, for your consideration, if we could make a small pragmatic change to condition 14 to require the portaloos to be removed seasonally rather than weekly, that would aid in the operation of the site. By approving the application on this basis, you will be not only supporting a nationally important renewable energy project, but also helping to safeguard a much-loved local business and community facility. On behalf of GSE Grays, the Snowden family, and Nobles Promotions, we would be very grateful for your support today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Claire, do you want to add anything there to the 2 points raised?
Yes, it's disappointing that we've come today and asking for the portaloos to be stored on the site for the season. It is a matter that I'd been discussing with the applicant, and I'd sort of raised concerns regarding the openness of the facility. As you saw on the slide earlier, it's a wide open site, and to have storage containers or the portaloos there for the whole season from the end of March till October, that's, you know, sort of a matter that hasn't been fully considered, and we'd have to sort of consider again, you know, those issues in terms of very special circumstances. The applicant had, you know, we got to this position where I've got these conditions because that was something that the applicant had said that would be able to sort of, you know, accommodate. In terms of the portaloos on the existing site being stored in a container, as you saw from one of the photographs and the aerial, there is a plantation that gives some screening further down closer to Seaham, and so the units themselves, the container itself is more, well, it's less open basically, it's got some screening attached. And as I say, I don't think that, you know, having a container in that particular location, you know, would be acceptable, and it's not something that we have considered as part of this application, as you'll have seen when you've read it.
Thank you, Claire. Can I just ask, is there a change then in the position of the portaloos and containers with the new proposal?
I think in terms of the proposed plan, it shows 10 portaloos, and as I say, there'd been discussion with the applicant regarding what's going to happen to them. There was discussion about whether they could be in a container, but as I've said, that's not been something that, you know, we have considered, and I don't think would be acceptable on that open stretch of coastline. And as I say, I think there is a difference between that and where the containers are for the current portaloos.
Thank you. I'll throw the matter open to members for questions. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. In light of what Claire's just said there, and probably the unfairness to bring that to committee today, I'm just going to ask if the agent would happily take that part off, just to bring it back at a later date with the planning officer. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, yep. We have absolutely no problem at all with the current condition. It was it was a request of Nobles to ask whether or not there was any chance of any further flexibility. The difference being, as Claire said, is this part of the site's very much more open than the other part of the site, so we're more than happy to accept that and work through the practicalities. It was just a point to raise, but we're more than happy with the suggested conditions as otherwise. Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions? Councillor Bellingham?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I would just think, because of the practicality of the application and it's the temporary nature, obviously with regards to condition 14 and something that's just been thrown into the mix now, and that acceptance from the applicant that this is good, we are going to go with the plan. I'd just like to, because there's no objectors, I would look to move this this recommendation and support this application on the consideration that condition 14 in the portal stays with what's on the plan rather than what the developer said today.
Thank you. Any seconders? Wow. Councillor Hope, you second it? Thank you. We can now put the matter to a vote. All those in favour of the application? Unanimous. Thank you. We can close the meeting. Thank you.